How's it going, everybody? I'd like to thank all of those people that are continuing subscribers, new subscribers, or you're just passing through and you watch the videos. I do appreciate the support and the continued viewership. It is most appreciated. Well, one of the things that most of you probably know already is I am studying for the CCNP and service provider in general. And that's cool. You know, it's definitely something that I normally wouldn't do. Most people that I talk to and most people that I know would, after they have a CCIE, they only go after the CCIE level exams, which does make sense. So I took because of the fact that I'm working on the CCNP service provider courses for INE, I have to have the cert in order to do the videos, which makes sense, right? Because until I have a CCIE and service provider, you know, why would you believe somebody that isn't certified as, in service provider to give you info on the technology? I wouldn't personally, so that's why I'm like, well, I'm just going to go take the test, and, not that they're like, I'm just going to go take them like they're nothing, because they are difficult. But one of the things that I found was, as you're going through, you want to learn from somebody that's actually taken the test or certified in that particular track so that you can believe them. So I've actually received a few questions about the exam itself, and I'm going to answer those questions as I go through the video, and I will put my own 2 cents in. I'll give you my perspective of the exam and what I thought about it. And one of the things that I want to preface, though, before I talk about my opinions on the exam and stuff like that, is please keep in mind that I'm not a CCNA working my way up to a CCNP. I already have a CCIE, so my interpretation of things and my level of understanding is likely going to be deeper than most of you that are taking the test. And that may be, and one of the things that you'll have to remember is I try to be objective when I take the test. So when I look at an exam question and I look at the exam answers for that particular question, I try to gauge how I would answer that both two different ways. Okay, I read the question, I read the answers. When I'm reading the question, I'm already, most of the time, already forming a preconceived notion as to what I think the answers are going to be based off of my understanding. Sometimes I'm spot on. Sometimes I'm like, well, I had to reread the question because I maybe missed something or maybe didn't understand it completely. Then I got to go back and reread. If that's the case, so be it. And then normally what I'll end up having to do is I look at the exam questions and I ask myself, well, what would I answer if I didn't already know that? Because a lot of times the questions were worded in such a way, and the answers that were given, I would say, well, maybe there's 4 answers in each, and there was like a single click radio button, so there wasn't check boxes or what have you, and you would have to give your answer. You had to select one of 4. And I look at the answers, and maybe 3 of the 4 were right, 2 were more right, and maybe 1 was really spot on. And one thing you'll learn as you progress on, that even CCIEs on a CCNA or CCNP level don't score 100%. We just don't. I mean, there's little things that we forget along the way, and the bulk of the stuff I remember, I've retained, but there are little finite details that I might have to sit there and think about for a second because they're not, at the front of the brain when I go take these tests. So that's basically, kind of how I want you guys to understand when I say, when I took the exam and it's my perspective, I try to be neutral in my opinion. I try to give you the best platform to base your own opinions off of, because I don't want you guys to think that I'm coming off like the exam is easy and then you think the exam is easy, so you don't spend as much time studying from the material that you should. My honest opinion when you're studying for these tests is study for them as if it's the last test you'll ever take, and if you fail it, you lose all your certs. That's how I study for tests. I want to over-prepare so that the test is actually really easy. So one of the first questions that was asked was, did the exam seem outdated? And the answer to that question is to a degree. And let me preface this with why I say it that way. there were some command outputs that had 2014 in them, and these exams have been out for a while now, 3 or 4 years, and I'm assuming sometime in the near future they're going to probably be, refreshed. I'm waiting for CCNA to be refreshed. I'm waiting for CCNP to be refreshed. If that's the case, so be it. Great. One of the things that I noticed about the situation as well is some of the questions that they asked you, they're just for me playing with newer code. I could tell they were asking questions on older code, and if I wouldn't have spent the amount of time I did preparing for the exam and going through the material and not only preparing for the exam as a test taker, but preparing for the exam in a technical instructor perspective as well, I wouldn't have been able to answer the question. So outdated based off of the questions were asked on certain levels of code. They don't tell you what version of code in the exam blueprint or anything like that, so you're kind of left to your own devices to figure that out. One of the things that you'll want to make sure you study is 12.2 code. Basically, if I was you, CCNP Service Provider and CCIE Service Provider version 3 were very, very close iOS code version wise. So if I was you, I would go look up what code versions they were. I believe it was 12.2 on iOS and 3.9 on iOS XR. So if you want to go back and review those code versions, that's probably going to be very beneficial to you, and stuff like that. Now there's a couple other questions in here. Let's see here. One of the things that I'll have to be careful on, some of these questions were asked I won't say that they were NDA, breaking NDA, because the topic's not technically on the blueprint. So like for instance, if we read through the blueprint here, it never ever brings up anything about the Resilient Ethernet Protocol, or REP, which is a replacement for spanning tree in the service provider core. There is no questions about that, so I don't really consider that to be an NDA breakage. But a lot of it is more or less, questions regarding, how do you interpret this? How do you interpret that? And for one of them, the interpretation of the question is based off of the person reading the question, obviously. Now, I thought the exam was pretty fair for the most part. There was a lot of questions, obviously, on ISIS, OSPF, some IPv6, a little bit of, well, there wasn't any of that, but I have to be careful what I say, because I don't want to give, too much information away. The thing about the exams is, if you go through the blueprint you see on your screen here that is sitting behind my head, you'll see that a lot of the stuff, there's a big portion of the exam that is focused on BGP. I would say know BGP and be comfortable with it. The same thing goes with the advanced route course. Be very, very comfortable with that. The other thing that's interesting about the exam is the questions that they ask you. There's not a lot of, to me, I thought some of the questions were harder than others. And once I talked about some of those particular situations with people that I know, they were like, well, that's just you overanalyzing the question. And they're probably right, because when you ask me a question about something, the first thing I'm going to do is, well, you could use this. If you use this command, that's going to optimize it. If you use this command, it's going to change some things. So I had to go back and I had to read the question. At least in my experience, and you guys can debate this in the comment section below. One of the things that I found with Cisco exams is they're very objective, meaning the question that they're asking you, they're looking for a specific answer, but they're looking for the Cisco best answer, whatever Cisco determines. Now, mind you, they're kind of the way that the exams are written. It's kind of interesting, because a subject matter expert in that particular track, asks the questions. They write the questions. Then they have this other team of people on the exam team that try to load balance and keep the mixture of exam questions fair enough to where they're going to make sense. They're not written so skewed that they want you to go definitely this way. They want you to go left. You have to go left. And they're not written to the point where you have to go right. You have to go right. They're not written in that respect. So the questions that they ask you, I think, are pretty fair. Some of them are worded kind of weird, at least in my opinion. But then again, I'm taking the exam from the approach of I already have a CCIE, and I'm going through and I'm talking about the technologies in a video and demonstrating them. So I'm assumed that I have a pretty deep understanding of how this stuff is put together. So if so, great. If not, I need to work on that. So the big thing that I work on a pretty regular basis is making sure that the content that I am putting together for all of you guys is clear enough and it's to the point, but now that I've taken the exam, I'm going to have to go back through and tweak some things, which obviously I can't tell you what I'm going to tweak because, that could potentially lead you in a direction that, this is definitely going to be on the exam. You're definitely going to want to test on it and lab for it. But overall, I thought the exam was pretty good. I'm going to wrap up the videos for that. I only have a couple more to do, and then I'll be done. And then I'm going to be digging right into wrapping up Advanced Route, which I'm done with a good portion of BGP for Advanced Route, but there's still some stuff that I have to go through and deep dive. And then I'll be dealing with multicast, and then I'll be dealing with IPv6 and some services. And then that should wrap that one up. And then after that, it's core and edge. And one thing that I'm planning on doing as we progress is, if you follow along, you'll realize that route is like the foundation core, and then you have advanced route builds off of route, and then core builds off of advanced route, and then edge builds off of core. They all build off of each other. So you can't have, if you take edge and you take route, you're kind of taking them out of order. So the thing that the big thing that I've found that is beneficial in my preparation for the CCNP and CCIE stuff is making sure that you are utilizing what you've learned to help propel you to the next level. Because in my opinion, service provider, when it comes to CCNP, is actually a pretty good launching point for you to go into CCIE on. Now, granted, there's not a lot of CCIE prep out there for service provider, and I'm planning on changing that. I'm planning on doing my own CCIE service provider course as soon as I'm done with CCNP service provider and taking it to the next level. So I'm going through pretty much what you would see in a routing and switching CCIE course through the ATC, but take it and remove the advanced aspect of it and just talk about the CCIE service provider technologies course, to where you go through and we hit, ISIS, OSPF, BGP, and then we start bringing in MPLS and we start building off of that. So we build the core infrastructure from the top, from the core up, and go from there. The thing that I find interesting about the way the CCNP is done is that if you do it correctly, that's a big thing, is using one course to build off of the other. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot in at least my going through and reading the material and stuff like that, I'm going to use the route course to be a prerequisite and to build off, to be useful for the advanced route course to build off of. And then, because that's going to incorporate deeper BGP, some multicast, some IPv6, and some services. Then we'll take it to the next level in core and talk about MPLS, traffic engineering, quality of service, things like that. And then from the next level on that, you have edge, which is taking pretty much everything you learned in route, advanced route, core, and then putting it all together in one big thing. And there's a big thing with that. And Edge, there's quite a bit of content to talk about in Edge. But what I'm planning on doing with Edge, and I don't know if I talked about this previously, is taking what you have seen so far in the other 3 courses and pretty much taking that and just, for lack of a better term, mushroom clouding it open to where we talk about BGP, we talk about MPLS L3 VPN, and we integrate multicast VPN. We integrate traffic engineering tunnels, because a lot of the stuff that you're going to see in the other courses isn't going to make a lot of sense until you see it all put together, at least in my opinion. So that's what I'm planning on doing with Edge. The beginning of the course will be all of the how does L3 VPN work? How does L2 VPN work? And then building off of that, and then I'll start pulling in all the advanced. I don't want to use the term bonus video because there won't be a bonus video. You won't have to pay more for it, but and to be a way for you to go in there and keep hitting it up and keep hitting it up and keep hitting it up until we go through and hit it, so that, for instance, if we do a traffic engineering tunnel, it's going to make a lot more sense to you, the viewer, if you see traffic coming in from a customer on a PE and a VRF, and then being TE tunneled a certain path through the MPLS core, and then getting dropped off a certain play. That'll make more sense to you, putting relevancy to it, seeing the actual trace route show up. That's where I'm going to go with Edge. I'm actually really looking forward to that, and I'm actually can't wait until I get there. But my enthusiasm kind of gets the best of me, and I'm doing way more in BGP for the advanced route course than I think is really necessary. Granted, I haven't taken the test for it yet, but that's where I'm going with that. Just to give everybody a quick update. Again, you guys have been absolutely awesome. I can't thank you guys enough for all the support you've been giving me and the feedback and stuff like that. If you have any questions, comments, stuff like that, throw it in the comments below. That a lot of what I don't know if you know this or not, but a lot of your comments and your questions and stuff like that help me gauge how I should deliver the material. So CCNP, I'm not going to go super deep. It's not a CCIE course, but I am planning on doing a rip it all apart and go from there when it comes to CCIE, when I plan on doing that course. I have to give a shout out to a really good friend of mine whose name is Nick. He put out a CCIE service provider comprehensive guide. The book is really high level. You have to have a really solid understanding of all the technologies before you start digging into his book, at least in my opinion. And so what I've actually been talking to him through some chat messages and emails back and forth, and I'm basically taking his book and I'm dissecting it, and I'm piecemealing things back together in a certain order, because to me there's got to be a logical flow. And what do I mean by a logical flow? Let me explain what I mean by this. So we go to INE's website and we click on course library, we go to Cisco training, we go to expert, we go to CCIE route switch. Okay, so let me go ahead and take a look at the can I see the let me see, is there a here, click on this guy. I want to see the playlist. So here's the playlist without me having to sign in. So let me go ahead and zoom in real quick. The way that I would roll this out is obviously you have LAN switching. We're not going to really touch LAN switching because it's not really needed in the lab or the written. So what we're going to first talk about is obviously IP routing. We'll talk about IP routing as a protocol independent, meaning you don't have to have OSPF or ISIS running in the core. I will talk about EIGRP and the CCIE stuff that I plan on doing, because the fact that it makes sense for PE to CE routing. We'll talk about a little bit about RIP as well, RIP and EIGRP, but briefly, just because of the fact that it could be potentially seen on the lab. And then OSPF in a lot of detail. Route redistribution in a lot of detail. BGP, etc. Convergence will be put in there because it's an IGP thing, where IGP convergence in an IGP section. And the same thing with that. IPv6 will be kind of melded in between all of those. And then you have multicast in the core. So what I'm planning on doing with that is everything you see here, I'm planning on doing in the advanced route course to help everybody that may not know much about multicast bridge that up into at least an enterprise level of understanding. And then when we get into the Edge course, taking that to the next level and say, okay, here's what we talked about in like a quick review video of how you would get, or two, and multicast in the core using PIM as a PIM aware core, and building that out to where you can run multicast VPN in an MDT in a data MDT tree, something along those lines. And then you have VPN. So we're going to hit DMVPN, GRE tunnels, things like that. And again, some of the stuff, like we're not going to talk about IPsec because it doesn't apply. L3 VPN in a ton of detail, because L3 VPN from an intra area or an intra AS perspective, from an inter AS type of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to go into the CCIE course, and it's going to take a long time to produce. But that's one of the things that I'm looking at doing, and I'm kind of looking at laying it out like this. And then we'll lay some security and some services out at the end to wrap it all up and put a nice little bow on it and ship it down the river. So that's the idea there. I'm utilizing what I'm doing for CCNP as a stepping stone to CCIE. At least that's the game plan. So that's pretty much what you guys can look forward to here in the future. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, comments, things that they would like to see, but now mind you, I'm doing service provider. So if you want to see something on BGP or something on OSPF or something on MPLS, throw it out there. I can include that in a video. I don't have to follow the blueprint to the letter, and I'm not. I'm adding a lot of extra stuff to the blueprint, or into the course. What's the word I'm looking for? The course outline, simply for the fact that I think it makes a difference. It might help you guys out. That's where I'm going with that. So thank you to all of you for all of your support. If you have, like I said, questions, comments, advice, whatever, throw it in the comment below. You guys are awesome. This is the reason why I've had so much success, is because the fact you guys give me feedback and I can do better in the future. Till next time, guys, take care, be good, don't do nothing stupid.